So, good evening or good morning, depending on where you are, to everyone joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about the Golden Visa, which is a interesting topic. It's probably one of the most famous residency visas for moving to Portugal. It's one that's got a lot of media attention, and for very good reasons, really. It offers a lot of flexibility to people who are not quite sure if Portugal is right for them or they still have ties to somewhere else. And so, very excited to have Jason Swan from Holborn Assets here, who's going to talk us through everything about the Golden Visa. It's become even more complex in recent years as property's been taken out of the equation and it's moved a little bit more towards funds and things that us lay people don't know a lot about. But thankfully, Jason is here to explain everything and give us the rundown on the Portuguese Golden Visa.
I will do my very best. Yeah, I've prepared a few slides, James. Yeah, I'll cover everything that everyone needs to know as of the 12th of November on the Golden Visa here in Portugal. Yeah, so yeah, ready when you are. And I've also invited a good friend of mine, Casper, as well, to help cover some questions on the US side for those that are considering using retirement accounts as a way to qualify for the Golden Visa. So Casper is fashionably late. I'm embarrassed to say, not a very good first impression for him, but I'm sure that's because he's super busy. He's that busy he can't even show up on time. But hopefully he'll join us shortly, and yeah, he'll be hopefully able to answer some questions as well.
Perfect. And if anyone does have questions, there is a Q&A box at the bottom. That's the best place for me and Jason to keep on track of them. And it also means if we don't get to all of them, it's very easy for us to look at the end and send a follow-up email. Whereas if you ask them in the chat, it can get lost amongst the chatter from the different people attending. So Jason, I'll leave it over to you.
Super. Yeah, well, we'll get stuck in then. Nice to meet everyone, kind of, although it's a little bit of a one-sided conversation when you can't see everyone, but hopefully I get a chance to field lots of questions from everyone shortly. Just to introduce myself, my name's Jason Swan. I'm one of the senior partners for Holborn Assets, who are actually one of the largest wealth management practices here in Europe. And this evening we're going to talk about specifically, of course, the Portugal Golden Visa. Around about 6 years back, we dedicated a part of the Holborn Group to help our clients achieve residency and citizenship by way of investment in different countries all over the world. I'm based here in Portugal. I've been down in the south, in my slightly biased opinion, the nicest part of Portugal, in Albufeira. I've been here now for 3 or 4 years, give or take. Previous to Portugal, I was in Malaga in Spain for 5 years. And previous to Spain, back in my hometown of Manchester in the UK. Don't know if I still have a Manchester accent these days, but maybe you can still pick it up. But any questions you have around moving to Portugal, anything, of course, around the different visa options to get permission to move to Portugal, whether it be now or in the future, or any topics financially as well. I'm also a regulated and qualified financial planner based here in Portugal that specialises working with expats to help structure their income and their assets in line with the Portuguese tax regime. So that not for this evening, but of course, yeah, everything we're going to cover about the Golden Visa, as James mentioned, there's a Q&A box in, so please feel free to say hello, drop any questions in as we go. If we do miss anything, I'll make sure that we cover them all off before we finish, and hopefully everyone gets lots out of the webinar this evening. To introduce Holborn briefly, by myself and my team, we offer a full all-encompassing service, if you like, to achieve Portugal's Golden Visa, and seeing that right through, holding your hand until when you get the passport, which is the kind of treasure at the end of the rainbow once 5 years has passed from when you apply for the visa. And yeah, we're providing an all-encompassing service. We'll first of all start the process with applying for your Portuguese tax numbers, setting up your bank account that you'll need here in Portugal as well, and facilitating all the different moving parts involved to get you to that Golden Visa. Feel free to check out some of our previous webinars, which we've hosted with Portugalists. Please type in my name into Google to any due diligence. You'll see lots of content online. And if there's any particular questions you have, as we mentioned, feel free to reach out. So the focus, let's jump in. should maybe let you do this slide by now, couldn't I, James? But I'll save you the job. We've got of course, the focus of the Portugal golden visa, one James knows very, very well, and one that is quite infamous over recent years for Portugal. And it remains to be Europe's #1 route to Europe. It is seen as the gateway to Europe for a couple of reasons. But in short, it is a 2-year visa, which you can renew as many times as you like. And it's a visa that allows you to live full time if you wish, simply travel, to retire, to study as much as you like in Portugal without any restrictions. After 2 years has elapsed, you can renew the visa again. And once 5 years has passed, you can then apply for a Portuguese passport. And if there's anyone that's not particularly good at geography, you'll be aware that Portugal is part of the EU. And with a Portuguese passport, you can then live in any country within Europe without any restrictions. So even without a plan to move or live in Portugal, if Italy is on the horizon, or maybe Spain, or anywhere else for that matter in Europe, you'll have that kind of plan B, if you like, or option to move to any of the countries at that point. It was introduced back in 2012. There's now been well over 11,000 applications successfully submitted for the Golden Visa. And yeah, it is one of 2 countries. There's only 2 countries now in Europe that will allow you to get a visa and a passport without physically having to move to the country for a period of time. And the minimum stay for the Golden Visa is only 2 weeks every 2 years. So you do not need to leave where you are. The Golden Visa is generally designed for those that are not necessarily moving right now or want to commit to Portugal full time, but like the idea of a plan B or a retirement plan or that freedom of travel, or perhaps maybe for children to study in Europe. It might be free healthcare. There's many different reasons, but the unique part about the Golden Visa is that you do not have to move to Portugal full time and not become tax resident as well. So that's what makes it quite unique. But Malta is the other option as well. Malta, you can do a very similar program to get an EU passport, but that requires over €1 million, part of which is a donation as well. So, but the advantage is you can get a passport in just 14 months. But in the main, Portugal outstrips Malta, maybe 10, 15 to 1 as a whole. But that's what it is. That's what the Golden Visa does. Holders of the visa get access to being treated just like a Portuguese citizen. The only difference is that you cannot run for president and you cannot vote, but everything else is the same. So you get access to Portuguese healthcare, which is, in fact, you probably know better than me, James, on that one, but it's, I think, around the 4th best healthcare system globally. And education-wise, yeah, as one of the top-rated education programs as well for British citizens. And other than that, it's a pretty nice place to stay. I know, James, you're itching to find a way out to Portugal, aren't you?
Absolutely. It's it's a nice option for people. I was wondering then, so you said Portugal and Malta as the 2 options. What about Spain, another country people will be looking at?
Yeah, well, Spain is currently still open. Spain does have a
Okay.
golden visa program. The main difference is that it takes 10 years to get a passport through Spain. But also, if you want to get the passport, you have to live and be tax resident in Spain for those 10 years as well.
Okay.
If you want to simply live in Spain, then there's no minimum stay, which is great. But yeah, the big difference is it's a lot longer and a lot more commitment to get the passport. Also, for reference, we expect the Spanish program to finish in January time as well. It's been debated for quite some time. We're kind of hoping they might follow suit to what Portugal did and keep the program open, and maybe just remove property investment potentially. But it's looking at the moment like it's a full-on close for January.
Okay. And what about another challenge that people have is learning the language. Would you have to learn Portuguese to some kind of level if you were going to apply for citizenship or just apply for the Golden Visa?
The Golden Visa requires no language. I embarrassingly don't really speak a word of Portuguese, but I will have to pass some Portuguese very soon. I've been here now for nearly 4 years, so within the next I really should get onto this, but in the next 2 years, I've got to pass some level of understanding of Portuguese. And the options that you have, well, you've got the full duration of the visa to pass an A2 level of Portuguese. And you need the proof of understanding, or the certificate, if you like, when we do the application for your passport. So plenty of time to study. Some clients are choosing to gradually learn over the 5 or 6 years. Others choosing to just take a tutor on and crash course a pass within a few months. And now, early this year, there is now actually a way where you don't need to take a test. It's a lot more expensive, but you can just prove that you've done 150 hours worth of study instead of passing a test. So, 2 different options. But yes, you do need to pass for the passport. Okay.
Yeah, that's great, Jason. Thank you for that. Someone else is asking about, let's see, which country was it now? If you know anything about the, first of all, the thoughts on the Greek Golden Visa, whether there's one there and how that would compare. And also, if Spain, if you did manage to get in the Golden Visa route before it possibly goes in January, whether you would have to give up your previous citizenship.
Okay, so on the Greek side, yes, Greece does have a golden visa program as well, with a capital requirement of 250,000 euros upwards. Again, it's more designed to live in Greece rather than really a pathway to getting a passport. Unofficially, or should I say, officially, you can apply for a passport after 7 years if you live in Greece for 7 years, but it's very, very difficult to do that. But still open, and many people still wanting to go to Greece. So yeah, very, very valid route into Europe if you prefer Greece to Portugal. And the second question, sorry, James, you got your question?
Second question was about Spain and whether you would have to give up your original citizenship if you took on Spanish citizenship.
Yes, that is a good question. You do, and unlike Portugal, yeah, it's not possible to get dual citizenship through Spain. So another factor in that process as well. But remember as well, going through Portugal, you can still get access to Spain. So after 5 years, you can still get permanent rights in Spain without having to relinquish your citizenship, and you can get it 5 years sooner. So yeah,
That's true.
ways to
Okay, so a faster way to move to Spain is to move to Portugal first.
Yeah, or the way I did to Spain first and then to Portugal, which was the wrong way. Well, oh, the right way in some ways. Okay, is there any other questions there, James? You want me to?
You know what? I think that's great for now, Jason. There's other questions coming through from people, but let's move on because I think these questions might come up in your presentation.
Yeah, super. Okay, so the investment criteria for the golden visa. So this changed well, pretty much 1 year ago. Portugal removed property investment as a way of qualifying for the visa, as a way to curb increasing house prices, which doesn't seem to have had much of an effect over the past 12 months at least. But nonetheless, there is 5 routes to qualify for the golden visa. The first option is you can set up a business in Portugal if you so wish, and you can employ 10 members of staff. It's not something that you would do just to get a visa, but if you do have plans to expand an existing business into Portugal, that might be an added benefit to consider. You can make donations if you're feeling generous of 250 or 500,000 euros. Very, very rare that we do those, but still possible. I think of the 2,000 applications we've now done for the golden visa, I think we may have done maybe 1 application for a donation, but it is an option nonetheless. And we've got the investment categories, which first and foremost is the option of choosing a venture capital fund or an investment fund from 500,000 euros on the basis that the fund meets a certain criteria set by the Portuguese government. Or the second investment route is to increase the share capital in an existing Portuguese company, again, on the basis that that company supports existing or creates new jobs as a result of your investment. The most commonly chosen route is number 4, I would say, by quite some way. But yeah, ultimately, it's down to the investor's choice as to what meets their situation. Well, all of those are perfectly fine to get the golden visa. A couple of updates. So first of all, obviously, if you're looking online on the Portugal Golden Visa, generally the bad feedback that you get about the program is the very long processing times, certainly over the past few years, to actually receive the visa and the biometrics appointment. And yeah, it's very, very frustrating for those that are stuck in a queue waiting, of course, for that VIP pass to Portugal. But there has been some really positive news that I wanted to share with everyone over the past few months. And first of all, just a bit of background on the delays. I think back at the end of 2021, there was a complete meltdown with the online portal with SEF when the laws changed as to what type of property that you can invest into at the time. And for 3 months, no new applications could be uploaded by any law firms across Portugal, and it caused absolute chaos. There was applications lost. There was people that were sent back to the beginning of the queue. And my heart goes out to those that, have been waiting, some people up to kind of 2-3 years to get a visa. Since then, it's been much better. CEF was taken over by AIMA last year. AIMA now have a new, much more efficient processing process and online portal. And it was actually just last month, I'm just going to change screens for a second. It was last month when we had a communication about the special task force that has been set up by the Council of Ministers to address the backlog. And there is now a commitment to clear. Very good news for everyone. Very good news for those that are considering and in the process. But all of the applications will be cleared and concluded by the 2nd of June, 2025. And clear objectives laid out by the government to ensure that they meet that commitment. Which is a breath of fresh air for those that have been waiting. And also now for new applications, we can now assume a 6 to 9 month processing time to receive the visa, which is much, much faster than what we've seen previously. So again, loads of detail on this. If anyone would like a copy of that, obviously feel free to ask, and we'll send that back out. So that's the first bit of news. Secondly, let me just jump back on, sorry. So that's a bit of good news. Previous to that as well, for those that aren't aware, the 5 years now that you have to wait to get the passport or to apply for the passport now begins from when you apply for the visa. Previous to this year, it was 5 years from when you receive the visa. So it was a lot longer that you had to wait to actually get that EU passport. But now it's 5 years from the day that you apply for the visa that you can now submit your application for the passport. So again, more good news, and that relieves the pressure a little bit for those that are waiting for the visa to know that there will be no delay in receiving their passport. Because regardless of how long that takes, it will still be 5 years from the day that they applied for the visa. So 2 measures put in place this year, all good news. It's getting better. There was a time, James, when applications only took a couple of months back in the early days, but of course the program's become increasingly popular over recent years, and yeah, it has been overloaded, but yeah, staff, 150 staff now across the board have been recruited for AIMA to start chopping down that waiting list, which is great.
That's good. I think the main people, the main goal people will have will be that passport or, some kind of permanent residency at the very end. So knowing that the clock starts ticking when you submit the application, regardless of what happens behind the scenes with AIMA is really, I think that's probably really good to know for people listening.
Yeah, very good news. Last year was all bad news, if you remember. It was just this is changing, let's go, and this is closing. But this year's been okay. It's been pretty stable, really, and lots of good updates coming out. So yeah, nice to share. So other than that, current snapshot as to the capital entry points for different routes to the Golden Visa. So I mentioned 2 key categories before. One was making a donation. Should you wish, that's formally the lowest capital route to the visa. You can make a donation of 250,000. Or you can invest from 500,000. Okay, so these are the legal requirements. Now, there are some alternatives by way of different proposals from providers within Portugal that allow a lower entry point on both, the sunk cost option or the donation of 250. And now clients have the option to seek full financing of the full 500,000 euros for a cost of 168,000. And in short, you can borrow the €500,000 for 7 years for a cost of 168. So of course that is still a cost, and that's a cost which is a much higher cost than if you make a profit from an investment. But as a comparison to donating 250,000, the 168 just reduces that kind of entry point a little bit further. All investment routes, to clarify again, are at 500,000 euros. As of today's date, there are investments that pay an upfront return, which by doing so would allow less capital needed from the investor. One in particular offers an upfront return of 101,000 euros as opposed to an annual interest. And you can actually use that 101,000 euros towards the 500,000 that's required into the investment for the visa. There's also a further loan option for those that require the loan or would like the loan of 74,000. So minimum investment capital needed is 325. And with that, you walk away with a profit as well as the passports rather than a donation. Same at 399 minus the loan option, and then all funds, across the board, and share capital is of course the 500,000. I hope that's nice and clear. But any questions on those, feel free to drop them in. We're going to cover these off in a bit more detail shortly. And so some basics on the Golden Visa. Who can qualify? So as long as you don't already have an EU passport, you can apply. As long as you have a clean criminal record, or a pretty clean criminal record, you can apply. We have had some success with some misdemeanors in years gone by, but in the main, Portugal is ensuring that you have a clean criminal record. And you make an eligible investment, of course, in one of the categories set by the government. And it's a horrible part of the deal, this, James. Horrible, horrible part to have to do. But you've got to come to Portugal for at least 2 weeks every couple of years. But that's it. You do not need to live full time in Portugal. You do not need to change your tax residency to Portugal. You just need to make sure you come here at least 2 weeks every 2 years, and you're good to go. That's it. There's no other age requirements. There's no restrictions of any kind. That's it. 4 key points. Super easy, or super straightforward. Not necessarily easy, but straightforward. As far as family members, okay, so there's one main applicant per investment and per application, but that applicant can add their family members to the same application, including their partner, whether married or unmarried is fine, as long as you live at the same address. You can include children up to the age of 21, which are automatically assumed as dependent by the Portuguese government. They can be older than 21, as long as we can evidence that they're still within further education or in some way still financially dependent. And you can include parents as well, whether you want your parents to join you. I'll leave that up to everyone to decide. But if you want your parents to join, again, if they're over age 65, they can be automatically included without any proof of dependency. If they're younger than 65, what we can sometimes do is, again, prove dependency, but also we can change kind of who the main applicant is. For example, we could put a parent as the main applicant to have you as their dependent, depending on ages, or your children as the main applicant and you as their dependent. But I think the company record for the most people on the same application was 13 people, which was done earlier this year, and we had step parents, step children, everyone was on there. What a great family holiday that will be. But that's it. That's the family criteria, the Golden Visa. The process, bit of a busy slide, but in short, just to kind of hammer home that it's a full service. So you do not need to seek any other professionals within Portugal outside of our services. Of course, you're very welcome to, but we will accommodate for all the parts involved in the process. Step 1 will be, of course, choosing the investment or the route that you wish to qualify. Once you've done that, we'll then apply for your tax numbers, which is referred to as your NIF. We'll open the bank account in Portugal. And you need those two things before you can do any investing for the visa. And that will take around 2 to 3 months. During that time, we'll also start to collect the documents that we need for your application, such as marriage certificates, copies of passports, proof of address, criminal record certificate, maybe birth certificates for children. They're the main documents, but we'll gather all those together. You'll meet with the lawyers. You'll complete the investment contracts with the lawyers, and then the lawyers will ask you to transfer the investment money to your new Portuguese bank account, and then make the investment, and we submit the application. Now that is all, of course, on the basis that it is quite simply a cash investment rather than use of a retirement account, where the process is slightly different. And for that topic, hi there, Casper. I've just noticed you're there, sneaking in the corner.
Yeah, I'm here. It's been good. Managed to get it.
And I'm going to bring you in shortly, if that's okay, to cover off a bit more as to what you do there at IRA Financial to kind of help with US retirement accounts. And together, just to note for everyone at the moment that if you do go down the option of using a retirement account, the process is slightly different, a little bit more work involved, a little bit more cost involved. But yeah, I'll bring Casper in shortly to cover that off. Other than that, yeah, once the investment is made, we submit the application. We submit the application to AIMA. We then wait for the biometrics appointment with a now new super short, not super short, but shortened wait time for the biometrics, at which point that is the only time at which you need to physically be present in Portugal. And that's not going to be until at least 6 months after we submit your application. Everything until that point is done remotely. But yeah, at that point, that'll be your first trip. You'll be accompanied on the day. We'll do our very best to keep you entertained on what is a very soul-destroying day at the AIMA offices, as James and I are very well experienced with. There will be some queuing and some frustration, probably some delays, but we will be there to accompany you nonetheless and help with, of course, the translation on the day. And then, yeah, we wait for this visa to come through. The visa is not actually golden in any way. It's actually not golden at all, but it looks a little like this here at the bottom, which will be printed with your newly taken photos and fingerprints. So that's the path. So that's overseen by myself and my team here. Again, you have one point of contact throughout the process. We'll keep you up to date as we hit those key milestones. We'll let you know as and when information is needed. And of course, we will inform you as soon as the biometrics appointment is scheduled and your visa is on its way. So that's step one. Then you've got the visa. You can then live in Portugal without any restrictions, and then you are on the path to Portuguese citizenship, which we can apply for then 5 years thereafter. So again, it will take around about 3 months to submit your application, which will include getting the bank account ready, tax numbers, documentation, getting money transferred, etc., etc. Submit application after 3 months. I've got 12 to 18 months on here. Like I said, we're expecting this now to be a little bit shorter with that news earlier last month, or up to 12 months now to receive the actual visa in your hand. I will do the first renewal after 2 years. Okay, the golden visa will last for 2 years. We'll do the first renewal for a further 2 years. 2 years thereafter, we'll renew again for a further 2 years to give a bit of time for your passport to be received. And we'll do the passport application around the similar time to when we do that second renewal. And just to remember, coming back to James's question before, you've got to maintain a clean criminal record and pass either the Portuguese language exam or to evidence a minimum amount of study, at least over that 5-year period, in order for us to submit your passport application. And that's it. Piece of cake. It's that easy. It's not easy at all, but that's our concern. For you, it's pretty easy because we, of course, do the heavy lifting for you. But once the passport is issued, that then is the end result. You have a European passport. You can then live in any European country. You can work in any European country. You can study in any European country. And that's both for the main applicant and dependents as well. For you and I, James, we take kind of visa-free travel for granted, I think, globally, but there'll be some nationalities listening that have to apply for a visa every time they want to go on a holiday. which is a point to highlight, you know, for the golden visa and the passport. You can travel visa free then to over 190 countries around the world. So yeah, so there you go. That is the program. That is the golden visa. Hopefully that was nice and clear. But again, any questions on the mechanics of the program, please feel free to drop in. I can see some questions coming in. Which, yeah, I think we'll maybe come to those shortly, James. Maybe just finish off with a few final slides, would you say?
I think that's a good idea. Just to say that I put up a little thing should have popped up to request a call with you, Jason. I can see some of the answers are a little specific, and some people leaving their email addresses and phone numbers in the chat. Much better to fill out this form, otherwise your details will get lost in the chat. So if you fill out this form, I'll pass this over to Jason, and then he can get in touch with you after this. And yeah, we'll run through some other questions after you've done with your slides.
Yeah, super. So I know Casper is keen to jump on. He's chomping at the bit to cover his slides. So I won't.
That's right.
I won't hold you up too much longer, Casper. But let's just start with some basics on the Portuguese side. Now, when you are choosing a fund, ultimately you can choose any fund manager, any fund, as long as it meets a certain criteria, and we can make sure that your visa application is successful. The rules are as follows. First of all, the fund must be approved and regulated in Portugal, okay, by the CMVM, which is the Portuguese Securities Commission, if you will. And the fund may not either directly or indirectly invest into real estate, which is the new restriction that came into play last year. The fund must invest at least 60% into Portuguese assets as well. So, for example, you couldn't have a Portuguese fund that tracks the US stock market, for argument's sake. Likewise, you couldn't have a US fund that invests into the Portuguese stock market. We need a Portuguese fund investing primarily into Portugal. The minimum investment is 500,000 euros, as we've covered, and it's really important to make sure that you have the investment throughout the duration of the visa until your passport is issued. Any breaks in the investment may jeopardize the visa and in turn jeopardize the passport application. So it's important not to choose a fund that, for example, matures after 4 years, because you'd then be in a bit of a tricky position because you wouldn't have your passport just yet. So that's it. They are the rules. As long as the fund meets that criteria, we are good to go. We can get the visa and we can get you on your way to Portugal. You can invest in any sector. Okay, these are some of the top sectors within Portugal, some of the more prominent. You'll hear me talk about these in other presentations and within one-to-one meetings as well. But ultimately, choose any sector that you so wish. There's no restrictions on that aspect. Just be mindful, again, some top tips, just to first and foremost, be sure of what fund you're investing into and the security of your capital when choosing a fund. Really, really important. Portugal, generally speaking, as much as I love Portugal, Portugal probably wouldn't be the first country that you would choose to invest into if you wasn't looking at the Portugal Golden Visa. The financial system is a lot better than it has been over the past kind of 10, 20 years, but it's still not quite as robust as the likes of the US and the UK. And first and foremost, you have to be very sure about what you're investing into, because any bad decisions may result in a loss of capital, which all of a sudden makes the Golden Visa very, very expensive. So where possible, make sure you know that the fund manager is credible, has a strong and long track record. And where you can, try and find a fund that is asset-backed as well, so that if there isn't anything does happen to the fund, that you have further layer of security to protect your investment. Be mindful of fees. Funds vary wildly in fees. There are some very expensive funds that will qualify. There's also some funds that don't have any fees at all. So just be clear and make sure you have full transparency on the cost of the investment as well. Be aware of how the returns are paid. Is there a fixed return? Is there a guaranteed return? Is it performance-based? Is it based on the success of one project? I get asked all the time about, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I've seen some incredibly, wildly risky investments that are all centered around the success of one venture. and the success of that venture. And if it goes well, great, you make lots of money. If it doesn't go well, you have full risk of entire capital loss. So got to be really careful of these things. There are different providers out there. There's lots of information online, and it's just important to make sure that you're speaking to a credible source and having a good understanding of what you're investing into. Understand the investment risk in short. If you are investing as a US citizen, make sure that it is compliant with the reporting standards back to the US as well, which is a bit of an extra hurdle to be mindful of. And where you can seek out if there's any additional incentives. Sometimes there are funds which you may get free legal fees, for example, or there might be a complimentary stay in Portugal, to maintain your minimum stay each year and things like this. So always ask and always seek, and ye shall find. But there's just a couple of few tips on searching for funds. And this is a general overview of what's out there right now. I'll always, when we speak on a one-to-one basis, at the point of wanting to begin the process of applying for a golden visa, you'll have access to the fund directory, and you'll be able to choose from all the different funds that are out there within Portugal. And I'll have all the information and all the key facts that you need to work out which one is most suitable. But as a general overview, these are some of the bigger fund managers within Portugal. They like I say, they vary in risk rating. Some funds tie the capital up for longer than others as well. Ideally, you don't want to be tying up the money for too long when you plan to get the passport after 6 years. Setup fees, management fees, returns. If you want something that is of a fixed return, that can be done with a 4% return that's fixed and guaranteed, or you can have something that targets a higher return, which is performance-based, which carries more risk, but potentially a bigger reward. As we mentioned before, you need at least 325,000 euros worth of capital to invest, or the option to fully finance an investment for a cost of 168,000 euros. So there you go, super quick crash course. But again, for one-to-one meetings, to talk in more detail and to access the fund directory, please do feel free to drop me an email and we can schedule some time to do so. I hope that was helpful. A couple of quick examples before I hand over to Casper. This is a very typical example of an equity fund that's currently available to choose from. It's actually with Portugal's largest asset manager, dating back over 10 years when they were founded with over €1 billion in investment capital. These are the type of facts that you want to be finding out. I personally would stay clear of funds that maybe have just popped up over the past few months, where I can, but if you've got a good track record, it helps to give you a bit of confidence on the security of the fund. Of course, minimum capital is 500,000. It diversifies into different sectors within Portugal. Target returns of early teens, and past performance over the past 5 or 10 years in excess of those target returns as well. It's not just kind of pluck a number out of the air kind of thing. Other than that, a fixed return example, something like this is designed for investors that don't want to have the worry of the Portuguese stock market going down and things like this. You can just have a fixed return of 101,000 instead of interest paid every year. As I mentioned before, you can use that towards the 500k that's needed. You have a guaranteed exit when you get your passport from year 6 of 500,000. In its simplest form, you have 399 that goes in and 500 that comes back out when you're all finished. It's asset backed. There's some additional incentives as well. And again, it invests into different sectors within Portugal. And the walkaway option, lastly, like I said, very, very simple. It's a cost of 168,000 euros. Someone else gives you the 500,000 for 7 years. You have absolutely zero investment exposure. And again, very simple, low capital route, but of course a cost rather than an investment on that one. Other than that, just a really handsome picture of me, but I had before I had hair. Yeah, I've actually, in fact, I won't tell you why I've got hair now. I'm not in that picture, but yes, always speak to an expert. If you have any questions on the Golden Visa program, please do reach out. And other than that, yeah, I'll hand back to you, James, if that's all right.
Thank you so much for that, Jason. Lots of questions coming up related to that. So I don't know if you want to jump in with some of them now, or you want to let Casper speak and come back to them at the end.
Well, Casper, I think Casper's just got a couple of slides, so maybe we could yeah, we could bring Casper in, and then we'll field them all together, because there might be some for Casper and some for me.
That's a good idea. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, well, hey, I'm Casper here. I work with IRA Financial. I'm a senior account manager here. We specialize in self-directed IRAs. So when Jason mentioned you could be using retirement funds for this type of investment, that's what we're here for. We help you with the rollover process of moving from another retirement account into this specialized IRA that allows for alternative investments. And totally allows for, real estate, private businesses, hedge funds, anything else in that kind of area, and this will qualify. You can make foreign investments out of this SD IRA. Usually you think that you can have, you have to take like a penalty tax or, any kind of tax for moving out of an IRA to make this investment. But with this scenario, you're actually moving directly into this IRA, so no tax implications. And my team here will help you make the investment through the IRA, so also no tax implications. You're not getting hit with any tax penalty at all. And it's really kind of a two-step process. We'll set you up with a domestic side LLC. Initially, your IRA will invest into this LLC that you manage. And from there, you can use the LLC to invest into Portugal and any investment they have set up for you. This will completely be qualified, because what this is you're really just investing into an investment for your IRA to benefit the IRA. And then in addition, it now qualifies you for that golden visa, since the IRA funds are your funds. So everything will check out that Jason was saying. You can meet the requirements. We're here just to administer the plan. We're just a custodian. We don't provide, full financial advice or anything in that kind of area. We're just really here on the US side to help you use your retirement income to fund this kind of investment to gain access to the golden visa. There's not much else to really say about it. There's some technicalities that you could have if you have multiple accounts, maybe for instance, a traditional Roth. We can work with that as well, even combine both accounts into one LLC, making it a multi-member, and then funding out to the golden visa investment. So there's certain kind of things that we can definitely do to work with you depending on your situation. But in general, this is just another option that you can use to make this happen. I don't know. I think that's pretty much the whole gist of it there. So kind of back
Okay.
to you there, James. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Casper. That's really useful information to anybody coming from the US. I know one of the big concerns is, my money's already tied up somewhere else. How can I make this investment? So helpful, very helpful to have you on board to help there. If we've covered everything on sort of investing through the IRA, and you did mention that other options were available, Casper, would that include a 401k as well?
Yeah, so if you are self-employed, we can set you up with like a solo 401k, and then that
Okay.
will also be able to make the investment. Otherwise, generally speaking, every investment is made through a self-directed IRA. Our tax attorney and founder has been doing this since about 2020, and this has been the strategy we've been taking.
Okay, so for those that want to do that, I'll be sharing contact information for both Jason and Casper after this. Let's run through some questions then. Casper, these may be more for Jason because they're going to be more general, but if there's anything that relates to you, feel free to jump in as well.
Okay.
Let's have a look. So Jason, property, can you still buy property for the Golden Visa?
Unfortunately, not for Portugal. You can
Yeah.
in Spain, but not for Portugal.
And only for a short period in Spain, I guess, if it's potentially ending in January. That is a shame, though. I guess you could invest in the Golden Visa through funds like this, and then if you have money left over, if you're fortunate enough to have plenty of money, you could still buy a property for yourself. There would be no exclusion there.
Yeah, and something, and everyone kind of had to change the plan when that law changed. But now, yeah, I mean, it doesn't. You can still buy a property. You can still, like you said, James, you can still buy a property and run the Golden Visa investment simultaneously. or you can rent a property. And their plan is in kind of 5 or 6 years, all of that investment capital is going to come back. And some of my clients are choosing to kind of use that time just to kind of find where they want to settle in Portugal, with a plan to kind of buy the big family home later in life when that money comes back into the bank, and they know exactly where they want to spend their time.
Okay, perfect. Let's see what other questions. So for those that maybe don't have the full amount to pay for the golden visa up front, let's say they have, say 100,000, 200,000. Is there a possibility to pay in stages, or would you suggest one of the other sort of routes that you talked about, like financing?
Well, yeah, you can pay in stages, but the
Okay.
application for the visa can't be submitted until the total sum has been transferred to the Portuguese bank account. So the lowest capital option is the cost of 168,000. The lowest investment capital needed is 325,000, and it can be paid in stages for both, but ultimately the application wouldn't be submitted until all of the funds have been transferred.
Okay. And you mentioned a few numbers there. 500,000 seems to be the standard, but there are some lower amounts. I wonder if we could go back over that slide just slightly, because I can see a few questions coming in about that. I take it that we can say the first two on that slide, the 168 and the 250, this is money you don't get back. You're essentially making a donation, or you're buying into the program, or likely don't get back, at least with the donation.
Correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
this is purely as an alternative to the donation. Naturally, giving away 168,000 compared to making a profit of 100,000 is €250,000 difference, which is a lot of cash. However, if it's only possible to qualify at 168 or 250, 168 is a lot less cash than giving the government 250,000. So it's an alternative to the donation, but yes, it's still a cost compared to an investment.
Okay, so if you're feeling particularly charitable, you could do the full 250. If you're trying to reduce your costs, you could do the 168 and get in that way. In terms of costs, then there are some other questions related to sort of fees and costs, particularly with regards to Holborn Assets. Could you explain a little bit about how you would charge clients, and if they also wanted to work with someone like Casper, would that be included as well?
Sure. So the cost, there's no additional cost to work with Holborn. The only costs that the investors pay are the legal fees and the government fees. Both vary dependent on the type of route that the investor wishes to qualify, whether it's a company setup, a donation, or an investment. Also, how many family members will be included on the application as well. So during a one-to-one discussion, James, very quickly, once I understand a bit about the client's preferences, we can display exactly pound for pound, or euro for euro, should I say, what the cost breakdown is over the full term. And yeah, the best way to find out is to, again, drop me an email, book some time in, and yeah, within 10, 15 minutes on a Zoom call, we can go through all the costs and help with that. Casper works independently of Holborn, so Casper's services and IRA Financial will be separate with Casper. I'm sure Casper will be happy to field that. Casper, would that be something that you could cover?
Yeah. Yep. So since we do have a partnership here with Holborn, we're offering everyone 40% off our LLCs. So that's a reduced price from $1,000 to $600. That is just a one-time cost to establish. We can choose any of the 50 states to set up the LLC in, and then ongoing for our custodial fees, it is $460 a year. That is a flat rate. If you do start this year, I'll prorate it down to $115 since we're in the last quarter. But then otherwise, that's the only two fees you really have to be aware of.
So
Okay.
quite by comparison, James, it's the US side, the cost is quite trivial. The main additional cost, if you go down that route, is more for the formation of the Portuguese LLC and the accounting of that Portuguese LLC, which is approximately €5,000 per year as a guide. So over the term, you can add a cost of maybe €30,000, but that cost would allow you to keep monies within US retirement accounts for US tax purposes. So it's, of course, just a case of the investor weighing up which one makes the most sense.
And if someone was looking to do that weighing up, Jason, they can get in touch with you, and would you be able to give them a breakdown? If this is you did option A, this is what you could expect to spend, and if you did option B, this is what you could expect.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, we'll do that. We do that on the screen. And then following the meeting, I'll send out the particulars, the cost breakdowns, some brochures, some really entertaining videos of me on YouTube, I'm sure. But everything that you would need to know to digest the information. And of course, I can introduce everyone to Casper when needed to cover that side as well.
Okay, perfect. One thing that we haven't talked about that we talked about a few years ago at least was NHR and tax benefits. There is at least one question about that. NHR, as I understand it, is gone for the time being, possibly to return. Do you have any more information on this, Jason?
Well, NHR is back, James, just in a
Okay.
completely different shape to what it was before. So obviously the big incentive for new residents with NHR was potentially a tax-free income for the first 10 years that you live in Portugal. And you could draw a tax-free income on dividends and rental income. And pension income was capped at just 10% per year as well. However, the NHR 1.0 finished last year. I think it was now. Yeah, back into last year. NHR 2.0 is now in action. However, it's not quite as exciting as before. It's more designed for those that are still working and those that are working within a certain profession, in line with, again, the requirements from the government to have a flat rate of income tax, rather than kind of targeted at retired individuals and talking about dividends and pension income. So it is kind of back, but it's not as good as before. It's like a really rubbish sequel to the first movie.
And I'm sure if people get in touch with you and they sort of want to know, if I become tax resident in Portugal, how much am I likely to be taxed at? That's something you can talk them through as well in deciding whether to keep outside
Really
Portugal.
Important to add as well, James, and that I get asked a lot about, does the visa or the passport mean I become tax resident in Portugal? For example, in the US, I think there's only two countries in the world that taxes its citizens rather than its residents. One is the US. I think the other is maybe South Korea. But Americans in particular are used to thinking of a passport means paying tax. But Portugal does not tax citizens, it taxes residents. So you have to physically live in Portugal for over 6 months of the year before you become liable to Portuguese taxes. So until you physically live here, your tax stays exactly the same. The only tax that you may pay is on any income that's derived from within Portugal. But the visa or the passport does not make you tax resident in Portugal.
And the potential return that you would get on your investment if everything went well, whether that's upfront or something variable, would that be taxed, first of all, and would that be taxed in Portugal, second of all?
The likelihood is yes, you will be taxed. Well, you will likely be taxed, yes, depending on the investment and where the returns are paid from. So if the investment pays a return from within Portugal, you will pay a flat rate of tax in Portugal. Depending on where you are tax resident, there may be a tax treaty between Portugal and the country where you live, which will prevent you from being double taxed. There are also some countries that don't have a tax agreement with Portugal where there may be some double taxation. So these are things to factor in, again, which we can dive into during more kind of personalized one-to-one meetings. And also, it's important to note that some investments might not pay a return from within Portugal, at which point it would just be taxable in your home country, your tax resident.
Okay, so it sounds like there are a lot of different factors from multiple different funds going on. It must be hard to have created that dashboard that you did to try and create some sort of ability to compare across them.
Yes, well, it's a constantly evolving marketplace, I suppose. But yeah, there's lots. It's a big investment. You know, it's important that you've got all the key facts to make an informed decision.
One of the questions then is sort of whether you provide advice, whether you talk people through the option, or if it's more a case that you refer people to other companies.
Well, we will introduce the clients to their chosen fund manager. So we will provide all the information, all the key facts, everything that you would need to really choose which fund is most suitable. And then as part of our service, we will introduce to that fund manager, and then we will liaise with that fund manager to help with the application and the investment. So yeah, we will provide all the information to help the client choose for themselves which is the most suitable.
Okay. And another question there, let's see what we've got. What is an upfront return? You mentioned it earlier on with some of the options, Jason, just for those that don't know, how would that compare to sort of a typical return on an investment?
So as most will know, the returns of any investment are often driven by the risk. And if you want to go for something that's a very, very low risk, generally you expect a lower return. If you want to go into something more adventurous, you can aim to have a much bigger return. For the vast majority of people I speak to, James, it seems to be stressful enough sending €500,000 to a foreign country and moving abroad to then add on to that the concerns of the performance of the Portuguese stock market, for example. So quite often it's very much preferred just to have something that's predetermined and fixed, so that you know exactly what's going in, how long it's going to be invested for, and exactly what's going to come out and when it comes out, with security being the main aspect rather than big profits. And then for something like that, like I say, you can have there is a way you can have a fixed return, regardless of fund performance or anything. It's just fixed, it's paid up front, and you have a guaranteed exit in year 6 of 500,000. So if you use that 101,000 towards the 500, the total capital is invested is 399. That 101 return works out to be a equivalent of just over 4% per year, which is not bad. I know it's not bad by any standards for something that has a fixed return and that is asset backed as well. And that's one example. Like I said, that's one example of how an upfront return can work. There's nothing paid annually by comparison to a more traditional fund, if you will, like an equity fund where you are paying an annual return based on the performance of that fund.
Okay. That makes sense. We've got some questions sort of related to family members there. So if someone is in a long-term relationship with someone, they're effectively married, just not officially. How does that work with the Portuguese Golden Visa?
It's fine. You don't have to be married as long as you have proof that you live at the same address. That's all you need. I had someone ask me the other day if he could have 2 wives on the application. I said, you only get 1 wife. You have to choose your favorite. But no, you don't have to be married. As long as you live at the same address, you're okay.
What about children? I understand, you're considered a child until you're 18, but what if you have an older child and you want to put them on the application? Is that doable?
It is. Children up to the age of 21 are automatically assumed as dependent. We are able to add children on that are older than that, but we must prove some form of dependency. And the easiest way to do that is by providing evidence that they are enrolled in further education. So if they're still in some kind of study, great. If they're still financially dependent, as long as we can evidence one of those 2 things, there isn't kind of a strict age limit. But it does become more difficult as they get older than kind of 26, 27 years old.
Okay, so you might be putting your kids back into education in order to get them on it.
Quite a good sell-off, I would say. I'd say, it's quite a good sell-off. If you go back to school, you can get a passport.
Yeah, that's a good deal. What about same-gender partner? Is there any discrimination in Portugal, or at
Nope.
least in Portuguese law?
No, you're good to go. As long as we can prove you're at the same address, you're okay.
I think Portugal was one of the first countries to legalize gay marriage, so it's something that's been in law for quite a while.
There you go. Yeah, no problem at all. As long as there's only one, as long as there's only one husband.
Okay. So you can't help out a cult leader with multiple wives then.
No, I'd struggle with that one.
Okay. Let's see. And if someone had the golden visa and then they decided they wanted to work in Portugal, would this allow them to do that?
Yes, yep, you can work full time. Yeah, it's fine. You have full rights to work.
Okay, perfect. And in terms of leaving during the time, I think this question, there might be some confusion. It sort of says, if you have to leave at any time during the 8 months out of 12, does the residency go back to 0? I think this would apply more to something like the D7 or the digital nomad visa. The golden visa is in a class of its own. Maybe you just want to reiterate that, Jason.
Yeah, indeed. The golden visa doesn't have any minimum stay apart from about 2 weeks, 2 weeks every 2 years. But unlike the other residency visas like the D7, you don't have to become tax resident. And I think the 8 months, like you say, James, comes from the D7, where you do need to physically live in Portugal to maintain the visa.
Okay. And then, Jason, if you were moving over to Portugal as someone from Manchester who hadn't gotten in time before Brexit, and you were trying to decide, where am I going to stick potentially €500,000? How would you make this decision as someone perhaps with the skills that you have and in finance and without the skills?
Well, first of all, seek good advice. Speak to a professional, James. Maybe someone like me would be a good place to start to understand the process that's involved and to start to gather the facts, the clear, transparent facts about the investments that are available and that will qualify for the visa whilst protecting the capital. Okay, it's not just about picking a good investment, but making sure capital is secure. So start with the facts, speak to a professional, do some due diligence, of course, and yeah, work closely with somebody that has done it many times. I think we have done over 10% of the world's golden visa applications for Portugal, and we have a flawless success rate on our applications as well. So we're very well versed. But that would be my advice: speak to a professional that's experienced, and yeah, make sure you're dealing with the facts, rather than hearsay or unqualified advice, shall we say, on the internet.
Yeah, I will say from my point of view, when I've looked into it as someone who doesn't really understand this stuff, let's say, there are an interesting selection of funds that popped up the start of the year. As soon as the property was gone, funds jumped up, and it does make me a little wary, companies forming so fast and being an investment. So I would personally be looking out for really good quality advice and information just to make sure that I was investing in somewhere where I would feel confident that I'm getting my money back after those 5 or 6 years.
Yep, me too. Me too. 100%, James. There's something else I'm going to add to that, but it's escapes my mind. But yes, I completely agree.
Well, while you're thinking, potentially, I can ask you another question, which is this 14-day requirement every 2 years. Does that apply to every family member or just the primary applicant?
That applies to everybody in short, everyone that wants to maintain the visa and everyone that wants to get a passport.
Okay, so you have to take your family on holidays every 2 years at least for those 5 years.
You do. You got to bring the kids. Unfortunately, you can't leave them at home, or you got to bring your parents, maybe.
Okay, so good to know that you'll be having a lot of big family holidays in the Algarve for the next few years as well. Let's see what other questions we have. I think what I would say to people is some of these questions are, specific. A lot of people, I think, would want individual advice here. I have put up the form to request a call with you, Jason, so I recommend filling that in. I'll obviously be sharing your contact details in the email that goes out after this as well. Let's see what else we have. for a couple that's investing, would they have to invest just 500,000 and then pay fees afterwards? And maybe you could speak a little to those fees, or would they have to invest 500,000 each?
It's 500,000 per application, and
Okay.
on one application, if it's a couple, they'll both be on that same application. So 500,000 in total. And again, they could add potentially parents and they could add potentially children as well. And everyone's on the same 500,000 investment.
Okay, fantastic.
Difference generally, the only real difference of adding family members is really just the government cost. The legal fees, there's a marginal difference, but the government fees on average is around about €6,000 per additional family member.
Okay, good
So it
to.
depends how close you are to your parents and whether or not they're worth €6,000 each. But yeah, that's the average cost. You also have the renewal costs as well, which at the moment
Okay.
are going through with just €84. Very, very low. I don't know if it will stay like that for forever. But other than that, yeah, everything else is all in the same application and very similar.
Okay, so potentially going through cheaper at the moment. With regards to siblings, then, Jason, have you had anyone successfully add siblings to an application?
Siblings is not possible, unfortunately,
Okay.
James. Yeah, unfortunately, you can't take siblings or work colleagues or friends, just parents and just kids.
Okay. There is one question about a disabled or special needs sibling. Maybe that would be a rare case, perhaps worth getting in touch with you to see if there would be any flexibility there if that person was the legal guardian or something along those lines.
Yeah, potentially so. In very unique circumstances, may be possible. Yeah, so happy to pick up on that one to one.
Yeah, and I assume you would consult with a legal advisor to see what the possibility would be in that instance before submitting anything.
Correct. Yes. Before anything is spent, we will make sure everything is in line and all will be well.
Okay, well, I think we've had a good number of questions from people, Jason. I think the best thing now would be to wrap up and let people rewatch the webinar if they want. It'll be on YouTube, and also I'll send out your contact details afterwards in case they want to book a meeting with you and potentially with Casper as well to talk about moving forward with the Golden Visa.
Yeah, super. Hope that was helpful, James. But any questions, you know where to find me. And I think don't forget to obviously visit your website as well, James, because it's not just the Golden Visa, is it? There's
There,
many things
yeah.
to learn about Portugal.
There's a lot to learn about Portugal, and especially if you're just thinking about moving to Portugal for the first time. I know there's been a flood of people getting in touch with Portugalist over the last few days. Not sure if something major happened in another part of the world, but lots of inquiries at the moment. And so if you are one of the people who are just thinking about Portugal for the very first time, it is worth having a look around, reading the articles on things like the culture, the different places you could live if you did decide to move here, and just getting more of a feel for Portugal, and then the actual practical financial things. That's for Jason and Casper.
Yeah, I was gonna add something to that, but yeah, that's spot on, James. Yeah, what was I going to say? Completely forgot. Anyway, any questions? Anyone can ask. You know where I am.
Okay, well, people can get in touch to find out what that was. We'll leave a little
Well, that
suspense.
was it. Sorry, that was just to finish. Yeah, it was. Again, I'm not talking about any. I don't know what might have happened in other parts of the world over the past week, but we've already seen a notable uplift in demand for move to Portugal or a plan B to Portugal. So anyone that is looking to kind of get ahead of the herd, as it were, or get ahead of the queue, front of the queue. Not a herd, that's a bad word, but front of the queue. Best to obviously get in contact. We'll try and escalate the application process.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. We mentioned earlier the backlogs with AIMA. Hopefully they will clear that up in the time that they have said, but you certainly want to be getting in touch sooner and getting to the front of the queue or the herd or the line, whichever one it is, so that you don't get stuck in limbo there. Well, Jason, thank you very much for that information. Casper, also, thank you so much. I'm sure you'll have plenty of inquiries from people thinking about this as a route to getting residency in Portugal. So appreciate it, and hopefully have you both back again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is phenomenal.
Thanks, Casper.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Casper.
Thank you, Jason.
Bye-bye.
Everyone, see you soon. Bye now.
Bye.